They cornered her in the chemistry lab after everyone had left. 3 boys with trust funds and football scholarships who thought her dark skin made her less than human. When they called her charcoal and tried to force her to clean up their mess like a servant, they had no idea she'd been trained by her Uncle Leah, former Navy SEAL, who taught her that sometimes the only language bullies understand is pain. What happened next would leave one boy with a dislocated shoulder and the entire school questioning who really held the power at Westfield Academy. The September rain hammered against the windows of Westfield Academy, an elite private school nestled in the hills of Maplewood, Connecticut. The limestone buildings stood like monuments to old money, their Gothic arches and manicured lawns screaming privilege to anyone who dared approach without the right last name or bank account. It was 7:45 a.m., and the parking lot was already filling with Range Rovers and Teslas, each one worth more than most people's houses. Zara Mitchell stepped off the scholarship student shuttle, her second-hand uniform pressed but clearly not the same quality as the ones her classmates wore. She kept her head up, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, her brown eyes focused straight ahead. She'd been at Westfield for exactly 3 weeks, and already she understood the rules. Stay quiet, stay invisible, stay in your lane. But some people wouldn't let you. Well, look who's gracing us with her presence, a voice called out as she entered the main building. Zara didn't need to turn to know who it was. Chase Pemberton, 6 feet of inherited arrogance, wrapped in a lacrosse jersey that cost more than her mother made in a week. Behind him, as always, were his shadows. Tyler Brennan and Marcus Chen, both eager to prove they belonged in Chase's inner circle despite being new money themselves. She kept walking, her worn leather shoes clicking against the marble floors. The hallway smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement, a combination that made her stomach turn. She'd learned quickly that engaging with Chase only made things worse. Better to be a ghost than a target. But today, Chase wasn't in the mood to be ignored. "Hey, I'm talking to you," he said, his voice louder now, drawing attention from the clusters of students near their lockers. "Didn't they teach you manners in the ghetto?" Zara's jaw tightened, but she didn't stop. She had AP chemistry first period, and Dr. Harrison didn't tolerate lateness, even from scholarship students, especially from scholarship students. A hand grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around. Chase stood there, his blue eyes cold as winter frost, his perfectly styled blonde hair still damp from what was probably a 7 a.m. rowing practice. Everything about him screamed money, from his custom-tailored uniform to the Rolex peeking out from under his sleeve. "When someone like me talks to someone like you," he said, his voice dripping with casual cruelty, "you stop and listen. That's how it works here." Zara looked at his hand on her shoulder, then up at his face. For a moment, something flashed in her eyes. Not fear, not submission, but something else, something that made Tyler take a half step back. "Take your hand off me," she said quietly. Chase laughed, but it was hollow. "Or what, you'll tell someone? Who's gonna care? My dad owns half this town. The headmaster plays golf with him every Sunday." "I said," Zara repeated, her voice steady as steel, "take your hand off me." The hallway had gone quiet. Students pressed against their lockers, phones discreetly recording, everyone waiting to see what would happen when the scholarship girl challenged the king of Westfield. Chase's grip tightened. "You need to learn your place. Charity case. This isn't whatever public school dump you crawled out of. Here, we have standards. And you?" He looked her up and down with theatrical disgust. "You're like a stain on the reputation of this place." Marcus laughed nervously. Tyler just watched, his expression unreadable. Zara's breathing remained even controlled. Inside, she could hear her Uncle Terrence's voice. "Never throw the first punch. Baby girl. But if they put hands on you, you make sure they remember it." "Last chance," she said. Chase leaned in closer, his breath smelling like mint and malice. "What are you going to do? Hit me, please? One call from my father and you'll be back in the projects before lunch. Know your place." Charcoal. The word hung in the air like a poison cloud. Several students gasped. Even Tyler looked uncomfortable, but Chase just smiled, satisfied with the wound he'd inflicted. Zara went very still. Then, in one fluid motion, she grabbed Chase's wrist, twisted it off her shoulder, and stepped back, The move was so smooth, so practiced, that for a second no one realized what had happened. Chase's face went red. "You little Mr. Pemberton." The voice cut through the tension like a blade. Miss Rodriguez, the new history teacher, stood at the end of the hallway, her dark eyes taking in the scene with surgical precision. Unlike most of the faculty at Westfield, she didn't seem impressed by designer labels or family names. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, walking toward them with measured steps. Chase straightened his tie, his politician's smile sliding into place. "No problem, Miss Rodriguez. Just welcoming our newest student to Westfield traditions." Miss Rodriguez's gaze moved to Zara. "Miss Mitchell, are you all right?" Zara nodded once. "I'm fine. Just heading to chemistry." "Excellent. Don't let me keep you." Miss Rodriguez's attention returned to Chase. "Mr. Pemberton, a word?" As Zara walked away, she heard Chase's smooth voice, explaining how it was all a misunderstanding, how he was just trying to help the new girl find her way. She didn't need to look back to know Miss Rodriguez wasn't buying it, but she also knew it didn't matter. At Westfield Academy, money talked louder than truth. The chemistry lab was Zara's sanctuary. Unlike the ornate hallways with their oil paintings of dead white benefactors, the lab was clean, functional, honest. Chemicals didn't care about your bank account. Reactions didn't discriminate based on your zip code. She was early. As always, Dr. Harrison appreciated punctuality, and she needed every advantage she could get. Her scholarship covered tuition, but not the thousand small ways Westfield reminded you that you didn't belong. The laptop that was 3 generations behind everyone else's, the used textbooks with other people's notes in the margins, the lunch account that covered exactly the cheapest meal option and nothing more. She pulled out her notebook, a basic composition book, not the leather-bound journals. Her classmates used and began reviewing her notes from yesterday's lecture on thermodynamics. The numbers and formulas were a comfort, a language that made sense in a place where nothing else did. "You're always here early." Zara looked up to find Aliyah Patel standing in the doorway. Aliyah was one of the few students who didn't actively avoid her, though they weren't exactly friends. As the daughter of tech millionaires, Aliyah occupied a strange middle ground at Westfield, rich enough to belong, but not white enough to rule. "I like the quiet," Zara said. Aliyah nodded, setting her designer backpack on the lab bench. "I heard what happened in the hallway. Chase is such an ass." Zara didn't respond. Turning back to her notes, "You know he's not going to let it go, right?" Aliyah continued. "He doesn't like being challenged, especially not by someone like me," Zara finished. Aliyah had the grace to look embarrassed. "That's not what I meant." "Yes, it is." Zara's voice was matter-of-fact, not accusatory. "And you're right, but I'm not here to make friends with Chase Pemberton. I'm here to get an education." "Must be nice," Aliyah said softly, "to be that focused." Before Zara could ask what she meant, other students began filtering in, the room filled with the sounds of expensive backpacks hitting benches, the chatter of weekend plans at country clubs and vacation homes. Zara returned to her notes, building walls of equations between herself and the rest of them. Dr. Harrison entered precisely at 8:15 a.m., his white coat pristine, his gray beard neatly trimmed. He was one of the few teachers at Westfield who seemed to judge students solely on their work, not their parents' donations. "Today, we'll be conducting a laboratory experiment on exothermic reactions," he announced, his voice carrying easily through the room. "You'll work in your assigned pairs." Zara's heart sank. Her lab partner was Brittany Cole, a blonde clone of every other wealthy girl at Westfield, who spent most labs texting under the table while Zara did all the work. Today was no different. As Zara set up the equipment, Brittany sat on her stool, scrolling through her phone. "Did you see the video of Chase and that girl this morning?" Brittany said to the pair at the next bench, not bothering to lower her voice. "She actually touched him. Can you believe it? She's lucky Chase didn't call security." Her friend Madison replied, "I heard she's here on some diversity scholarship. You know, they have to let in a certain number of them." Zara's hands stayed steady as she measured chemicals, but inside, her temperature was rising faster than any exothermic reaction. "I don't know why they bother," Brittany continued. "It's not like she's going to fit in here. You can't just take someone from the hood and expect them to understand our world. Miss Cole? Dr. Harrison's voice cut through the chatter. Perhaps you could assist your partner instead of providing commentary. Brittany rolled her eyes but put her phone away. Whatever. It's not like I need to know this stuff anyway. My dad's already bought my way into Princeton. The experiment proceeded in tense silence. Zara worked methodically, professionally, refusing to let Brittany's words penetrate her concentration, but as she added the final reagent to their mixture, Brittany suddenly grabbed her wrist. Careful with that. Brittany said loudly, we wouldn't want you to blow up the lab. I know you people aren't used to handling delicate equipment. The beaker slipped from Zara's hand. Time seemed to slow as the glass container fell, its contents splashing across the lab bench and onto Brittany's designer shoes. The reaction was immediate tenot from the chemicals, which were relatively harmless. But from Brittany herself, you stupid, Brittany shrieked, jumping back. These are $800 shoes. You did that on purpose. It was an accident. Zara said calmly, though her eyes suggested otherwise. You grabbed my wrist. Don't lie. Brittany's face was red with rage. Everyone saw it. She threw chemicals at me. She could have killed me. The lab erupted in chaos. Students backed away as if Zara were radioactive. Doctor. Harrison rushed over, his face grave. What happened here? He demanded. She attacked me, Brittany wailed, just because I tried to help her with the experiment. That's not, Zara began. I saw it too, Madison chimed in. Zara deliberately threw the beaker at her. Me too, another voice added. Then another. Zara looked around the room at the faces of her classmates. Some looked away, unwilling to lie, but equally unwilling to defend her. Others stared back with cold satisfaction. The message was clear. You don't belong here, and we'll make sure everyone knows it. Doctor. Harrison's expression was unreadable. Miss Mitchell, Miss Cole, you'll both need to come with me to the headmaster's office. The rest of you, continue with your experiments. Carefully, as they walked through the hallways, Brittany continued her performance, limping dramatically, despite the chemicals having barely touched her shoes. Students peered out of classrooms, watching the scholarship girl being marched to judgment. The headmaster's office was everything Zara had expected: dark wood, leather chairs, and the smell of old money. Headmaster Richard Thornton sat behind his massive desk, like a judge preparing to pass sentence. He was a thin man with silver hair and eyes like a calculator, always tallying the cost-benefit analysis of every decision. Sit, he commanded. Zara sat. Brittany collapsed into her chair as if the walk had exhausted her. Doctor, Harrison has briefed me on the incident. Thornton began. Throwing chemicals at another student is a serious offense. Miss Mitchell, it could be grounds for immediate expulsion. I didn't throw anything, Zara said evenly. She grabbed my wrist while I was holding the beaker. It was an accident. That's not what the other students say, Thornton replied. Multiple witnesses reported that you deliberately attacked Miss Cole. They're lying. Thornton's eyes narrowed. That's a serious accusation. Miss Mitchell, are you suggesting that several of Westfield's finest students would commit perjury? Zara almost laughed at the notion of Westfield students being called finest for anything other than their bank accounts. I'm stating a fact. Brittany grabbed me. The beaker fell. That's what happened. She's lying, Brittany interjected, tears streaming down her face. She's been aggressive since she got here. Ask anyone. She threatened Chase Pemberton this morning. I defended myself. Zara corrected. He put his hands on me. Thornton leaned back in his chair. Miss Mitchell, I understand that adjusting to Westfield can be challenging for someone from your background. Perhaps this environment is simply too demanding for you. There it was. The verdict had been decided before she'd even walked in. Are you expelling me? Zara asked directly. Not yet, Thornton said, though his tone suggested he'd prefer otherwise. But you'll serve a week of detention, starting today. And consider this your only warning. Any further incidents, regardless of the circumstances, will result in the termination of your scholarship. Is that clear? Crystal, Zara said. You may go. Miss Cole, please remain so we can contact your parents about the damage to your property. Zara stood, her back straight, her head high. As she reached the door, Thornton called out, Miss Mitchell, you should remember that Westfield Academy has standards. Students who can't meet them don't last long here. She left without responding. In the hallway, she could already hear Brittany spinning the story. probably adding details about how Zara had threatened her life, how she'd feared for her safety. By lunch, the whole school would believe it. But as Zara walked to her next class, she felt something shifting inside her. They wanted her to break, to run, to confirm every stereotype they held about people who looked like her. They thought her silence was weakness. Her composure was submission. They were wrong. The afternoon crawled by like molasses. In every class, Zara felt the weight of stares, heard the whispers that stopped when she entered and resumed when she left. Her name had become synonymous with danger, with everything the Westfield students feared about letting outsiders into their sacred halls. In English literature, Mrs. Whitman made them read passages from To Kill a Mockingbird without a trace of irony. In world history, they discussed the civil rights movement as if it were ancient history, irrelevant to their enlightened modern lives. In calculus, she solved problems on the board while feeling the heat of 30 pairs of eyes burning holes in her back. By the time 3:30 p.m. rolled around, Zara was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with academics. Detention was held in the old library, a musty room filled with outdated encyclopedias and broken dreams. The detention supervisor, Mr. Kowalski, was a football coach who'd been relegated to babysitting duty after too many losing seasons. He barely looked up when she entered. Sign in. Cite down. No talking. No phones. You're here until 5 p.m. Zara chose a seat by the window, where she could watch the rain continuing its assault on Westfield's perfect facade. She pulled out her chemistry textbook, determined to salvage something from this disaster of a day. She'd been reading for maybe 20 minutes when the door opened again. Her heart sank as Chase Pemberton walked in, followed by Tyler and Marcus. Coach K, Chase called out cheerfully. Sorry we're late. Had to finish up some student council business. Kowalski waved them in without looking up from his sports magazine. Just sign in and keep it quiet. The three boys made a show of choosing seats, eventually surrounding Zara, like wolves circling prey. Chase sat directly behind her, Tyler to her left, Marcus to her right. The message was clear: you're trapped. For 10 minutes, they maintained the pretense of silence. Then Zara felt something hit the back of her head. A ball of paper. She didn't react. Another one followed. Then another. Hey. Charcoal, Chase whispered, his voice just low enough that Kowalski wouldn't hear. I heard you went psycho in chemistry. What's wrong? Can't handle being around civilized people? Zara kept her eyes on her textbook, but her hands had stilled. My father's already talking to the board about you. Chase continued. One more slip up and you're gone. But hey, maybe that's for the best. You people don't belong here anyway. Leave her alone? Man, Tyler said quietly. Coach might hear. So what? Chase replied. You think he cares? Half the team wants her gone too? She's bringing down property values just by existing. Marcus snickered. Maybe we should help her pack. Do charity cases even have luggage? Or do they carry everything in garbage bags? Probably stolen garbage bags, Chase added. Zara's pencil snapped in her hand. The sound was tiny, but in the quiet library, it might as well have been a gunshot. All three boys leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. Did we hurt your feelings? Chase mocked. Going to throw some more chemicals? Maybe assault another innocent student? I didn't assault anyone, Zara said, her voice low and controlled. Right. And I suppose all those witnesses were lying? Chase leaned closer, his breath hot on her neck. Face it. Charity case. Your word means nothing here. You're nothing here. Mr. Pemberton. All four students looked up. Miss Rodriguez stood in the doorway. Her expression unreadable. Miss Rodriguez, Chase said smoothly. Just helping our newest student with some chemistry concepts? How generous of you, she replied dryly. Mr. Kowalski. I need to borrow Miss Mitchell. Academic matter. Kowalski waved permission. Already back to his magazine, Zara gathered her things, hyper-aware of the three sets of eyes tracking her movement. As she passed Chase, he whispered something so low, only she could hear. This isn't over. Miss Rodriguez led her to an empty classroom down the hall. Once inside, she closed the door and turned to face Zara with an expression that was part concern, part frustration. Sit, she said, gesturing to a desk. Zara sat, bracing for another lecture about fitting in, about not causing trouble. I reviewed the security footage from the chemistry lab. Miss Rodriguez said instead. Zara's head snapped up. There are cameras in the lab? New installation over the summer. For safety purposes, Miss Rodriguez pulled out her phone, showing a grainy but clear video of Brittany grabbing Zara's wrist, causing the beaker to fall. Unfortunately, the angle doesn't capture audio, so it doesn't definitively prove your version of events, but it shows she grabbed me, Zara said, hope flickering in her chest. It does, Miss Rodriguez put her phone away. It also shows what could be interpreted as you deliberately releasing the beaker, without audio, without context. It's ambiguous at best. The hope died as quickly as it had been born, so it doesn't matter. I didn't say that. Miss Rodriguez sat on the edge of her desk. Miss Mitchell-Zara, I need you to understand something. I've been teaching for 15 years. The last 2 here at Westfield. I've seen this play out before. Scholarship students who don't fit the mold, who refuse to be invisible. It never ends well. So I should just take it? Zara asked. Let them call me names. Put their hands on me. Lie about me. I'm saying you need to be smarter than them. Miss Rodriguez replied. They want you to explode. To confirm every prejudice they have. Don't give them that satisfaction. What am I supposed to do then? Miss Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Document everything. Every incident. Every witness. Every detail. Build a case that even Thornton can't ignore. And if he ignores it anyway, then you'll have a record for the lawyers. Miss Rodriguez said simply. This school has survived a lot of scandals, but a discrimination lawsuit with evidence? That's different. Zara studied the teacher's face. Why are you helping me? Because I've been where you are. Miss Rodriguez said. First-generation college student. Scholarship kid. The only Latina in rooms full of people who thought I was there to meet a quota. I know what it's like to have to be twice as good to get half the credit. She stood, moving toward the door. The footage is saved on my personal drive. For now, keep your head down. Document everything. And don't give them any more ammunition. Can you do that? Zara nodded, though inside she wasn't sure. Keeping her head down had never been her strong suit. Good. And Zara? Be careful. The Pembertons of the world don't like losing. And Chase, he's got his father's mean streak and his mother's cunning. That's a dangerous combination. After Miss Rodriguez left, Zara sat alone in the empty classroom, processing everything. She had an ally. Sort of. She had evidence. Kind of. But she also had a target on her back that grew bigger every day. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. How was school today, baby? Zara stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keys. How could she explain that she was drowning in a sea of privilege and prejudice? That every day felt like a battle she was destined to lose? That the dream of a better education was turning into a nightmare? Fine. She typed back. Just studying. The lie tasted bitter, but not as bitter as the truth would have been. By the time detention officially ended at 5 p.m., the school had emptied out. Zara walked through the silent hallways, her footsteps echoing off the marble floors. The portraits of past headmasters and benefactors watched her pass with oil-painted disapproval. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air thick and heavy, with the promise of more storms to come. As she waited for the scholarship student shuttle, Zara noticed movement by the athletic building. Chase's Cara-black Mercedes that cost more than her family's entire net worth was still in the parking lot. She should have gotten on the shuttle, should have gone home, done her homework, documented the day's events like Miss Rodriguez suggested, but something made her pause. Made her watch as Chase emerged from the building with several other lacrosse players. They were laughing, celebrating something. Tyler carried a cooler that definitely didn't contain sports drinks. Marcus was showing something on his phone that had the whole group howling. Then Chase spotted her. The laughter died. The group exchanged looks, and Zara knew she should run, should get on the shuttle that was just pulling up. But her feet remained planted, her chin raised in defiance. Chase said something to his friends and started walking toward her. Not running, not hurrying, just walking with the confidence of someone who'd never faced a consequence he couldn't buy his way out of. The shuttle driver honked. You coming or not? He called out. Zara looked at the bus. Safety just steps away. Then she looked at Chase, now halfway across the parking lot, his friends spreading out behind him in a formation that looked almost military. She made her choice. "Go ahead," she told the driver. "I'll catch the late bus." The shuttle pulled away, leaving her alone in the gathering dusk with 6 boys who thought their money made them untouchable. Chase's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Big mistake. Charity case," he said as they surrounded her. "Huga mistake." Zara's hands curled into fists at her sides. Inside her head, Uncle Terrence's voice was calm and clear. "When you're outnumbered, you don't fight to win. You fight to survive. And sometimes, baby girl, that means making sure they remember the cost of coming after you." The parking lot security cameras had been broken for months. Everyone knew that the nearest building was empty, and the sun was setting behind the hills of Maplewood, painting the sky the color of blood. "You know what your problem is?" Chase asked, stepping closer. "You don't understand the natural order of things. But don't worry, we're about to give you a lesson you'll never forget." Zara's response was quiet, controlled, and carried the weight of every insult, every slight, every moment of humiliation she'd endured since walking through Westfield's gates. "Come and try." The words hung in the air between them, a challenge and a promise. Around them, the shadows grew longer, darker, hungrier, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the Connecticut hills like a war drum, announcing that the storm was far from over. The first rule Uncle Terrence had taught her was simple. In a street fight, there are no rules. The second was even simpler. When outnumbered, strike first, strike hard, and make them regret ever thinking you were prey. Chase was still talking, still enjoying the sound of his own voice when Zara moved. She didn't telegraph it, didn't wind up or warn. 1 second she was standing still. The next her fist connected with Tyler's solar plexus in a precise strike that folded him in half like a cheap lawn chair. The gasp that escaped Tyler's mouth was worth all the detention in the world. "What the?" Marcus started, but Zara was already pivoting, using Tyler's collapsing body as a shield between her and the others. Her uncle's voice echoed in her memory. "Use their numbers against them. Make them get in each other's way." Chase's face went from smug to shocked in the space of a heartbeat. "Get her!" he shouted, all pretense of control evaporating. 2 lacrosse players rushed forward together. Exactly what Zara had hoped for. She dropped low, sweeping the legs of the first one while driving her shoulder into the second's midsection. They collided with each other. A tangle of limbs and curses, but there were still too many. A hand grabbed her shoulder from behind. She turned into it, bringing her elbow up hard into someone's ribs, hearing the satisfying crack of impact. Another set of hands reached for her, and she had to dance backward, creating space. "You psycho!" Chase screamed. "You're done. You're so done." Marcus had recovered enough to join the assault. He came at her with the confidence of someone who'd taken a few boxing lessons at the country club. Zara let him throw a wild haymaker, ducking under it and coming up inside his guard. Her knee found his groin with surgical precision. Marcus made a sound like a deflating balloon and crumpled to the asphalt. 3 down. 3 to go. But the remaining boys had learned. They spread out, circling her like wolves who'd finally realized they were hunting something with teeth. Chase stayed back, letting his friends take the risks while he shouted orders. "Jake, get her legs." "Tommy." From the left, Zara's breathing was controlled. Even as her heart hammered against her ribs, she could taste copper in her mouth. She'd bitten her tongue at some point. The parking lot felt smaller now, the circle tightening. Jake lunged first, trying for a tackle. Zara sidestepped, bringing her knee up to meet his descending face. The impact was brutal, immediate. Jake's nose exploded in a fountain of red, and he went down screaming, hands clutched to his face. But the move left her exposed. Tommy grabbed her from behind, thick arms wrapping around her torso, lifting her off the ground. For a moment, panic flared. This was bad. This was very bad. Then, training took over. She threw her head back, feeling it connect with Tommy's nose. His grip loosened just enough. She grabbed his right arm, shifted her weight, and threw him over her hip in a textbook. Judo throw. Uncle Terrence had made her practice 1,000 times. Tommy hit the asphalt hard, the air leaving his lungs in a whoosh. That left Chase. He stood 10 feet away, his perfect hair mussed, his designer shirt untucked. For the first time since she'd met him, Zara saw fear in his eyes. Real, bone-deep fear. "You're insane," he breathed. "You just assaulted 5 students? You think you'll get away with this?" Zara wiped blood from her split lip. "Assaulted? I was defending myself against 6 attackers. Or didn't you notice your friends on the ground?" Around them, the parking lot looked like a battlefield. Tyler was still curled in a ball, trying to remember how to breathe. Marcus was on his knees, making sounds that suggested he might vomit. Jake's nose was definitely broken, blood streaming between his fingers. Tommy was conscious but not moving, staring at the sky like he was reconsidering all his life choices. The 5th boy had apparently decided discretion was the better part of valor and fled. "My father will destroy you," Chase said, but his voice cracked on the words, "Your family, your future, everything. You're nothing, you're nobody, maybe," Zara said, taking a step forward. Chase scrambled backward. "But right now, I'm the one still standing." "Stay back." Chase's back hit his Mercedes. "Trapped. I'm warning you." "Warning me?" Zara laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Like you warned me this morning? Like you warned me in detention?" "No. Chase, we're past warnings." She moved forward, and Chase did something she hadn't expected. He pulled out his phone, holding it up like a shield. "I'm recording this," he said desperately. "Everyone will see what you are, a violent thug who—" The words died as Zara's hand shot out, not to hit him, but to grab the phone. She held it up, making sure the camera caught her bloody lip, her torn uniform, the scattered bodies of his friends. "Good," she said to the camera. "Make sure you get all of this." 6 Westfield Academy lacrosse players cornering 1 female student in an empty parking lot after hours. "I'm sure your father will love explaining that to his political donors." Chase's face went white. He hadn't thought about how this looked, about the optics of 6 athletes attacking 1 girl. "Give me my phone," he said weakly. "No." Zara pocketed it. "Consider it evidence. Now, you have 2 choices. You can stay here and wait for the police to sort this out. I'm sure they'll be very interested in why 6 boys were waiting to ambush a female student. Or you can help your friends up, get in your overpriced car, and drive away. But either way, this ends. The harassment, the threats, the to chase it all ends tonight." Chase's jaw worked soundlessly. Behind them, Tyler had managed to sit up, looking at the scene with dawning horror. "Dude," Tyler wheezed, "we need to go. We need to go now." For a long moment, Chase stared at Zara, and she saw him calculating, weighing his options. Then, without a word, he pushed past her and started helping Marcus to his feet. "Get up," he snapped at the others. "We're leaving." It took them 5 minutes to collect themselves. 5 minutes of groaning and cursing and stumbling. Jake needed help walking, his nose still streaming blood. Tommy moved like an old man, one hand pressed to his lower back. They piled into 2 cars, Chase's Mercedes, and someone's Range Rover, and peeled out of the parking lot without looking back. Zara stood alone in the gathering darkness, adrenaline still singing in her veins. Her hands were shaking now, the reality of what had just happened starting to sink in. She'd fought off 6 attackers. She'd won, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Where are you? It's getting late. Missed the bus." Zara typed back with trembling fingers. "Getting the late one?" She looked down at herself. Her uniform was torn, her lip was bleeding, and her knuckles were already starting to swell. There would be questions. There would be consequences. But for the first time since arriving at Westfield Academy, Zara didn't care. She'd stood her ground. The late bus ride home was a blur of streetlights and silence. Zara sat in the back, Chase's phone heavy in her pocket. She hadn't looked at it yet, hadn't checked what else might be on there. That would come later. When she finally walked through the door of their small apartment in Bridgeport, her mother took one look at her and gasped. "Zara, what happened?" "I'm okay," Zara said, though she wasn't sure if that was true. "Just a disagreement." Her mother's eyes narrowed. Denise Mitchell hadn't raised a fool. She took in the torn uniform, the split lip, the defensive posture, and her expression hardened. "Sit," she commanded. "I'll get the first aid kit." As her mother cleaned her wounds, Zara told her everything. The harassment, the names, the setup in the chemistry lab, the ambush in the parking lot. She watched her mother's face cycle through emotions: anger, fear, pride, fury. 6 boys. Denise said quietly when Zara finished. They sent 6 boys after my baby. I handled it. Zara said, I know you did. Her mother's hands were gentle as she applied antibiotic ointment to Zara's knuckles. Your uncle trained you well? But baby, this isn't going to end here. People like that. With that kind of money. I know. Zara pulled out Chase's phone. That's why I have this. They went through it together, finding exactly what Zara had suspected: group texts planning the ambush, videos of other incidents, other students being harassed, photos taken without consent, a digital trail of privilege and cruelty that painted a picture darker than even Zara had imagined. We need to document everything, Denise said, her nurse training taking over. Photos of your injuries? Screenshots of these messages, everything. They worked through the night, building a case that would be impossible to ignore. By 3 a.m., they had folders of evidence, backup copies stored in multiple clouds, and a plan. You sure about this? Denise asked. Once we send this to the school board, to the media, there's no taking it back. Zara thought about the fear in Chase's eyes, about the sound Jake's nose had made when it broke, about the weight of standing alone in that parking lot knowing she could either fight or fall. I'm sure, she said. The next morning, Westfield Academy woke up to a scandal. The emails went out at 6 a.m., sharp to the Board of Trustees, to local news stations, to the Department of Education, to civil rights organizations. Each one contained carefully curated evidence of systematic harassment, planned assault, and administrative negligence. By 7 a.m., news vans were gathering outside the school gates. By 8 a.m., Chase Pemberton's father was on the phone with his lawyers. By 9 a.m., Headmaster Thornton was in emergency meetings with the board. Zara didn't go to school that day. She sat with her mother and the lawyer, Miss Rodriguez had quietly recommended, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in education discrimination cases. This is damning, Patricia said. Scrolling through the evidence, the group texts alone show conspiracy to commit assault. Add in the pattern of harassment, the administration's failure to act. Westfield is looking at a massive lawsuit. I don't want money, Zara said. I want change. Patricia smiled. Then you're going to love what I have in mind. The story broke on the evening news. Elite private school rocked by scandal, the headlines screamed. The footage Zara had captured on Chase's phone of 6 boys surrounding one girl played on loop. Though the actual fight had been edited out, parents called for blood. Alumni threatened to pull donations. The state education board announced an investigation. And through it all, Westfield Academy's carefully maintained image crumbled like ancient parchment. 3 days later, Zara returned to school. The building looked the same, but everything had changed. Students parted before her in the hallways, some with respect, others with fear. The whispers followed her still, but they were different now. She took down 6 guys. Did you see the video? They surrounded her. My dad says the Pembertons might have to leave town. Headmaster Thornton was gone, placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Miss Rodriguez had been appointed interim headmaster, her first act being the installation of security cameras in every hallway and a zero-tolerance policy for harassment. Chase and his crew were suspended indefinitely. Tyler had transferred already. Marcus's parents had sent him to boarding school in Switzerland. Jake's broken nose had required surgery, and his parents were too busy dealing with their own legal troubles to worry about revenge. Chase himself became a ghost, spotted occasionally in town but never at school. The golden boy of Westfield had fallen, and the crater he left behind was being filled with something new. But the biggest change was in the students who had been silent before, the scholarship kids who had learned to be invisible, the minorities who had accepted harassment as the price of admission, the girls who had endured wandering hands and crude comments because that was just how things were. They weren't silent anymore. A group of students formed the Westfield Equity Alliance, with Aliyah Patel as president and Zara as an advisor. They met weekly, discussing policy changes, organizing workshops, building a community that had never existed before. You started something, Aliyah told her one afternoon as they set up chairs for a meeting. You showed us we didn't have to take it. I just defended myself. Zara said, No. Aliyah shook her head. You stood up? There's a difference. 6 weeks after the parking lot incident, Zara was called to the new headmaster's office. Miss Rodriguez now, Dr. Rodriguez, as she preferred, sat behind the same desk Thornton had used to threaten her. The board has made some decisions, Dr. Rodriguez said. First, your scholarship has been expanded to cover all expenses, books, supplies, even a laptop. Zara blinked. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the alumni who were horrified to learn what was happening here. Several of them have created a fund specifically for students who face discrimination. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. They're calling it the Mitchell Fund. They named it after me? You earned it? Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward. Zara, what you did, not just the physical defense, but standing up to the entire system, it mattered. Change doesn't come from being polite. It comes from people brave enough to say no more. Zara thought about her uncle's lessons, about her mother's strength, about all the moments that had led to that night in the parking lot. I wasn't trying to be brave, she admitted. I was just tired of being afraid. Most bravery comes from that place. Dr. Rodriguez said, the place where fear transforms into action. As Zara left the office, she passed the wall of portraits, the old headmasters and benefactors who had built Westfield's legacy of exclusion, but there were new additions now. Photos of students of all colors, all backgrounds, a plaque announcing the new diversity initiatives, a quote from James Baldwin about the price of ignorance. The halls were filling with students heading to lunch. Some nodded at her, some smiled, some still looked away. She wasn't a hero to everyone. To some, she would always be the girl who had disrupted their perfect world. But as she walked to the cafeteria, no longer alone, no longer silent, Zara realized something important. She didn't need to be everyone's hero. She just needed to be her own. The cafeteria was buzzing when she entered. At a table near the windows, Aliyah waved her over. The Equity Alliance kids had claimed the space, a mix of scholarship students and allies who were working to build a better Westfield. As Zara sat down, her phone buzzed. A message from Uncle Terrence. Heard what happened. Proud of you. Baby girl. Your dad would be too. She smiled, thinking of her father. Gone 3 years now, but never forgotten. He'd wanted her to have opportunities he never had. To get an education that would open doors. He probably hadn't imagined she'd have to literally fight for it. But maybe that had always been the lesson. That nothing worth having comes easy. That respect isn't given. It's earned. That sometimes standing up means standing alone, until others find the courage to stand with you. Earth to Zara. Aliyah said, waving a hand in front of her face. We're discussing the Spring Diversity Summit. You in? Zara looked around the table at the faces that had become familiar over the past weeks. Students who had found their voices, who were writing a new chapter in Westfield's history. I'm in, she said. Outside, the Connecticut sun broke through the clouds, painting the campus in light and shadow. The old Westfield Academy was dying, its traditions of exclusion and privilege crumbling under the weight of truth. But something new was being born, something that started with one girl who refused to know her place, who turned their favorite weapon, violence, against them, who showed that power wasn't about money or names or skin color. Power was about standing up when everyone expected you to fall. And Zara Mitchell? She was still standing. The news crews had moved on to other scandals, other stories. The lawyers were still negotiating settlements. The changes at Westfield would take years to fully implement, but in that cafeteria, surrounded by students who were no longer afraid to be seen, to speak, to exist, Zara knew the most important battle had already been won. They had tried to break her with their words, their lies, their fists. Instead, she had broken their world. And from the pieces, something better was finally being built. As lunch ended and students scattered to their afternoon classes, Zara caught her reflection in a window. The split lip had healed, leaving no scar. The bruises on her knuckles had faded, but something fundamental had changed in her posture. In the way she carried herself through the world, she wasn't the scared scholarship girl anymore. Desperate to fit in, to disappear. She was Zara Mitchell, student, fighter, Catalyst. And she was exactly where she belonged. The bell rang, echoing through halls that would never be the same again. And Zara walked to chemistry class with her head high, knowing that sometimes the most powerful chemistry happens not in labs or beakers, but in the moment when someone finally says, enough, and means it. The reaction had been explosive. The transformation? Irreversible. And the lesson? Well, that was simple. Never corner someone who has nothing left to lose and everything to prove, because they might just teach you what real power looks like.